Putin's tanks faced one of the worst disasters of this war. Ukraine, with intelligence and precision, dismantled a brutal threat that could have changed the course of the conflict. Putin had launched a counteroffensive with over 50,000 troops, including 10,000 North Koreans, and tanks ready to crush the Ukrainian resistance and retake the region of Kursk, invaded by Ukraine. Putin believed that victory was guaranteed, that his unstoppable tanks would crush the Ukrainian resistance. But Ukraine was one step ahead and lured Russia into a devastating trap that decimated the Russian tanks. The powerful Russian counteroffensive turned into a total disaster. But then, how did Ukraine achieve this, and why does Putin keep falling for the same tricks? In this video, we will show in detail how Ukraine fooled Russia once again, the massive losses Putin's forces suffered, and what this means for the future of Kursk. Let's start with the traps. While Ukraine has been focused on establishing a foothold in much of the Kursk invasion, Russia has been trying to secure a position for itself on the eastern side of the Snag River. The goal is clear: to destroy Ukraine's foothold in Kursk, cutting off the supply route for Ukrainian troops stationed in the northern part of the region. Russia has had some success with this approach. Ukraine withdrew from fortified positions in the Kursk olive forest, with soldiers retreating to Milon. They also pulled back from Dere, which, just beyond the Snag River, Russia wanted more. Putin's forces aimed to capture as many settlements as possible along the river. So far, Russia has not been successful. Because the Sagos River serves as a natural barrier, Ukraine fortified the area. On the other side of the river, Ukrainian soldiers occupy elevated positions, allowing them to see Russian forces approaching. This enables them to move and withdraw troops quickly when necessary. As a result, Russia was effectively stalled around the river. Putin decided to change his strategy. Instead of continuing to try attacking the river fortifications, he sent more troops to break through defenses in the north, at Tolstoy Lug. The objective remained the same: to cut off Ukrainian supply lines in northern Kursk. However, by capturing Tolstoy Lug, Russia would also clear a path for direct attacks on a region called Novovik, east of Kursk. This position is crucial for Ukraine. Putin tried to take the camp at the start of the counteroffensive in Kursk, but his initial attempts failed. Ukraine withstood 5 waves of Russian attacks, inflicting heavy losses on Russia in the process. Estimates indicate that at least 300 Russian and North Korean soldiers were killed or wounded during the 5 attacks up to November 11th. Ukraine also destroyed at least 18 of the 29 heavy vehicles Putin had sent for these offensives, showing that they were well prepared to face the threat. By December, Putin understood that taking Tolstoy Lug would clear the way for attacks on Novovik, putting pressure on Ukrainian forces in the region. The Russian attack began, and according to Euromaidan Press, Russia sent several armored personnel carriers to cross a large reservoir north of Tolstoy Lug. The goal was to cross the reservoir, enabling more Russian forces to advance in the region and put pressure on Ukrainian troops. However, Russia had already attempted this route before during its initial attempts to retake Novovik-Novicha, and Ukraine knew Russia would try again. Ukraine set up constant surveillance in the area, using drones equipped with thermal cameras to act as an early warning system. When Putin sent his armored personnel carriers APCs, the system was activated and Ukraine sprang into action. Upon detecting the Russian vehicles, Ukraine launched Javelin anti-tank missiles at the convoy. The Javelin is a portable system with an effective range of about 2.4 kilometers. Its missiles, equipped with highly explosive HEAT warheads designed to penetrate armor, can destroy heavy equipment such as tanks with great efficiency. Ukraine had already used javelins with great success throughout the war, and this attack was no different. Within minutes, the missiles struck the Russian APCs, leaving the vehicles burning on the ground. The few Russian soldiers who managed to escape tried to flee into the nearby trees, But Ukraine was ready for this as well. First-person view FPV drones were positioned around the reservoir, allowing Ukrainian troops to locate and neutralize the Russian soldiers on foot, completing the destruction of Russia's first wave of attacks. The truth is, Putin wasn't actually trying to capture Tolstoy Lug. Russia sacrificed its APCs, sending its soldiers to their deaths, aiming to expose and identify Ukraine's firing positions. Ukraine already knew Russia's intentions and was, once again, one step ahead. This time, Russian troops advanced again, confident, in several large waves of vehicles. Armored vehicles, including tanks, were sent to attack Ukrainian firing positions. This is a common strategy for Putin. Identify the enemy's position and then send troops and equipment until their lines are breached. But Ukraine already knew everything. Even before Russia sent its first APCs to Tolstoy Lug, Ukraine had extensively mined the surrounding area. When Russian forces attempted to advance, they realized they couldn't simply bypass the Ukrainian positions without destroying their own vehicles, as the fields were littered with explosives. Thus, the waves of Russian tanks had to follow a single route, exactly where Ukraine wanted them to be. And the trap was sprung. Many Russian tanks and vehicles were stopped by dragon's teeth, a trap used by Ukraine consisting of small concrete pyramids designed to immobilize tanks, a tactic dating back to World War II. Putin still adheres to an outdated vision of warfare, relying on tanks to push forward. Ukraine used mines to force the Russians onto the desired route, where the dragon's teeth halted them and left them vulnerable to counterattacks. The few tanks that managed to get through still faced other challenges. They were exposed to Ukrainian firing lines, becoming targets for artillery, javelin missiles, and drone strikes. Each wave of Russian attacks was defeated by the same threat, and the Russian soldiers seemed unsure of how to respond. Retreating was not an option, so the tanks pressed forward, only to be struck by ammunition from Ukraine's battle brigades and the 36th Marine Brigade. Footage from the battlefield shows the destruction. Russia believed it had misled Ukraine, identifying its positions and attempting to bypass them through the fields. But with each tank that exploded due to mines, it became clear that Ukraine knew exactly what the Russian forces were planning. Other tanks were immobilized and abandoned by their crews, while many fell victim to artillery bombardments, turning into fireworks on the battlefield. The scene described by Euromaidan reveals a field of destruction, with Russian tanks and vehicles being humiliated in their attempt to advance near Tolstoy Lug. Russia has still not managed to advance to Novoivanovka, and Putin will be forced to reassess his strategy.